Welcome, guys, tonight to our session on Safe Hockey Officer program, and with a special attention on how we're going to roll this out in the community. This is a Hockey Australia session, but it is available tonight. We're running it for Hockey Victoria, but it is available to all states and territories. So we're just hoping to pull together some information and some resources so you guys can start the process of putting these things in place. I do just want to first acknowledge the traditional owners on the land that we are on. I'm on the land of the Wadawurrung people on the Bellarine Peninsula. I imagine we're all coming to this session or watching this video from lands across Australia. I just want to recognise the contribution of our First Nations people. I also want to acknowledge people with lived experience. We talk about safe hockey and about being able to create an environment in hockey where we are reducing, minimising or eliminating harm and abuse to children and young people and to our athletes. And sometimes when we talk about that, we have to sort of get to understand what abuse looks like, and it can be quite a distressing conversation. Tonight's conversation is less about that, but we will touch on it a little bit. So just make sure you look after yourself, reach out for support at the end of the session if you need to, or take a break.
I think young athletes need to understand that hockey should be really safe and fun. And if they ever feel unsafe, they need to feel comfortable to speak up and talk about their concerns. One of the many ways you can seek support is through the Safe Hockey Hub, which is available on the Hockey Australia website.
So I'll give you a little bit of a history lesson when it comes to safe hockey. I have been working with Hockey Australia as a partner through Sport Integrity Governance Partnership Agency. We are an external integrity partner of Hockey Australia, and I am the safeguarding consultant for SIGPA. So in about 2019, I came on board and started to hog away at some policies and some training, and still sticking around all these years later. So each year we sort of have new deliverables that we knock off and that we put in place, and we've done a lot of work at a national level and certainly with our state and territory teams, but we're now in a really lucky position where we can start to roll that out into the communities. It is a big piece of work, and it really relies on our member associations to promote and push the message out and to support our clubs and associations in the regions, but also to you guys to access the information and the resources that we have and to spread the word as well. So my background, I've been working in safeguarding the last 5 or 6 years. I work with a number of different sports. There's a lot happening in the sports space at the moment. I will touch on that today. So safeguarding really is finding its way into sport, which has been a really interesting process for me. So the national commitment for hockey is from Hockey Australia and the state and territory member associations is a commitment to ensuring the safety and wellbeing of all children and young people who are involved in our sport. Safe hockey is the term we use to describe where we're headed and also how we get there. So it aims to ensure that there are things in place to reduce the likelihood of abuse of a child or a young person, increase the likelihood of knowing about it, and also increase our ability to respond appropriately. So we want to create an environment that is safe for everybody, where there is no harm, but if it does happen, we want to know about it quickly. We want to be able to respond appropriately. Safe hockey is about policies and education and resources and support. And this is just one piece of the work that's available to you guys, but it's certainly a piece we've been working on for a long time. Online, if you Google Safe Hockey Hub and you haven't seen this before, you will come across a website which is specifically for hockey. It's on the Hockey Australia website. I'm going to bring it up if I can do that. So bear with me just for a second while I bring that across. The Safe Hockey website it was launched in 2021, and it's designed to have be the one-stop shop for all of our resources. So at no point in time are we asking people to go and create their own things, create their own policies, or create their own resources. One of the things from the very beginning that we aim to do was to have one place where you guys could access this, we were able to control the version of it, so making sure it's up to date. And it meant that anyone anywhere in Australia, as long as they had access to the internet, would be able to find the hub and access information. It would be great if I could stand in front of every person in hockey and deliver training around safe hockey, like I've been able to do with some of the member associations and some of the high performance team and also the state teams, but it's just not possible. What we have here is at least one way that if someone has an issue that's related to child safety or the well-being of an athlete, and they have not had any training, they've not been given any other information, that they should be able to come to this website and they should be able to find at least some immediate steps and some immediate information on the website, even if they've never had the training. Once we start to roll out training, that's great, that's a bonus, because then people will be able to have access to what's on here as well as a bit of context behind it as well. There's a raise a concern button on here that will be available for anybody to use. It's really just to highlight to Hockey Australia that there is an issue that needs to be raised. We have had a number of matters raised through that button. I sit on the Hockey Australia Integrity Unit, and some of the complaints and issues that come through start off as a raise a concern, and sometimes they're anonymous, and that gives an anonymous option to people. Sometimes that's the only option they'll take. So it is there. What happens is if somebody puts a message in, it will go to the integrity email, and they have the ability to put in the state that they're in as well as the club. So it will come, if we have that information, it will come out to clubs as well. And it might not be a full complaint. It might just be, I need someone to call me about something that happened on the weekend, or it might be something a bit more detail. So that's just another alternative to talking to somebody, to calling, to using the stop line integrity page as well. So there's lots of options when people want to come forward and want to share something that concerns them. At the moment, there are 5 policies, and I will talk to these in a little while because they will change, but they are there at the moment, and they will be the ones that you guys can use while we wait for the new policy to come into action. Lots of supporting documents, a one-pager around how to respond to a concern if someone brings an issue to you. This is really important for those of you in the room who are a committee member or a junior coordinator or a safe hockey officer who's already been appointed, and I know some states won't have got to that point just yet, but there's a lot of resources. So if someone does come to you and say, I need to tell you something, there's a one-pager there that will help talk you through that. Down here are what we call different zones for different cohorts. So we have a whole area for young athletes. They can come in here and get some really easy to follow, easy to navigate information around how to raise a concern. It will have questions like, what happens if I do it? If I tell someone what's happening, can I get in trouble? So it's just a really quick fact sheet that they can access, and it kind of continues on. So there is also, we have the external stakeholders, so that young athletes, adult athletes and families, and then our internal. So all of our officials, coaches and managers and clubs and associations. There are a ton of resources that help you understand what do we need in terms of our leadership and governance. How do we recruit people into our roles? There's a register there for raising concerns. So there's a lot of resources on there to support clubs. There's also a section here around access to digital assets. So, when we say to you as a safe hockey officer, you need to go and promote safe hockey in the hub to the rest of your club, there are literally these posters, these Instagram images set up, ready to go for you guys to use. So you don't have to make any of that content up. So I guess it's just important in the first instance to highlight that is there already. And up here where we have those zones, we will be adding a zone for our safe hockey officers. It's going to throw out my numbers a little bit, make it a little bit uneven. We'll have to redesign it. But there will be a zone here specifically for safe hockey officers, and the resources I'm going to talk you through tonight will be stored there so that you guys can all access that easily. In the meantime, because I need to navigate the right people to get that up and running, I will send out the documents to Jason, and he will make them available to you guys as well in the meantime as PDFs, but there will be a space, and we'll just keep adding to that as we have more and more resources. So I'm just going to jump back into our PowerPoint now. Jason, have you got the PowerPoint in front of you, or are we still at the Safe Hockey Hub?
I got the PowerPoint in front of me.
Excellent. Technology is on my side tonight. Thank you. So as you can see, the policies and the resources are all stored there. As we have more and more education available, particularly online modules, that will also be posted onto the hub as well for you guys to access. So I understand different states have different legislation. Just a quick rundown. In Victoria, the 7 standards rolled out in 2017. New South Wales standards rolled out in 2022, and then Victoria needed to catch up, and they have revised their standards and re-released those in 2022. And then both states had introduced compliance and enforcement powers in 2023. So there's a bit of a timeline going on. The national principles for child safe organisations came from the Royal Commission originally, and then was adapted to cover not just sexual abuse, which was the focus of the Royal Commission, but all types of harm and abuse. And that relates to all states and territories. So all states and territories agreed to those, but New South Wales and Victoria have now legislated their own standards. So it's important for you guys to know this, because I know that I like to think that everybody comes to this because they're just desperate to do all the things to keep kids safe, and they'll do whatever it takes. But I know that's not always true, and that behind a lot of the motivation in sports across Victoria particularly is this sort of panic about making sure that we're compliant with the standards, as well as obviously the best interest for children. So I want you to just be really clear that the work that we have done has been designed to comply with all of these. So don't stress about, well, where in Victoria we need this. There are a few gaps currently with what we have on the hub, but I'll talk you through what's coming. We'll continue to fill that and to add things later on, but we will always be thinking about what the expectations are in every state and territory, and making sure that the work that we do will help you guys be compliant, so you don't have to worry about that. Okay, National Integrity Framework. For those of you who don't know much about this, I'm going to give you a really quick rundown with a focus on the child safeguarding piece. The National Integrity Framework was designed by Sport Integrity Australia to bring all sports under the same banner, under the same policies. That is great news for people like me, probably for people like you, because it actually says you're not allowed to go and create your own child safe policy. You have to use this one. Now, the issue is they sort of launched it, and then they said reviewed it, and there was a bit of back and forth. And so we're not quite ready to sort of steam ahead with these policies endorsed and adopted by Hockey Australia and all the states. That's going to take a little bit of time. When it does happen, there are a number of policies in that framework, one of which is a child safeguarding policy. You can jump online to Sport Integrity Australia and have a look at it already, or any of the other sports who have already adopted it, and swimming is a good one. But essentially there is a policy, and that will apply to all sports. It will apply eventually when the state associations come on board. It'll apply to all of them, and it will therefore apply to you guys. It takes all the pressure off from having to create anything new. This will be the safeguarding policy for you guys. It will sit, it will replace those 5 chapters, those 5 policies that you saw in the Safe Hockey Hub. We will do that work, so keep your eye on the hub, and when the time is right, it will be replaced. There is also an online child safeguarding module that has been put out by Sport Integrity Australia. For a long time, we were doing the Play by the Rules child protection online module. It's kind of replacing that, but that module from Sport Integrity Australia is specifically about this policy. That's going to be really handy when this policy is in place. But right now, we're just sort of saying to people, hold off on using that module for a little bit longer, because it's a bit confusing to ask someone to do some training in a policy that is not yet their policy. So there's a little bit of like trying to just, cart before the horse, but be patient, that will come. And when it does come, we will have access to those resources like online modules, which will be really handy. Okay, in the meantime, we stick with what we have on the hub. You have a number of resources available to you. So I sit outside of Hockey Australia, but I am available and providing my services to Hockey Australia. In Hockey Australia, you have Jared Dowdy, who's the integrity manager there. Underneath that, every state and association will either already have appointed somebody as their safe hockey lead. In Victoria's case, that's Jason. Some of them have. Those that haven't are getting some follow-up communication in the next couple of weeks to make sure that they do have somebody, because I need to be able to educate those people so that those people can be a support to the clubs and associations they're responsible for within their states. So there's a bit of work to do in that space, but you will have someone that you can go to and they can access me as well. They'll be able to reach out and get some, answers and some more support if that's necessary. Then at a club and association level, we have our safe hockey officers. I know that there's been some discussion around whether or not this is a member protection officer or how that all fits. At the moment, we're saying to people, keep your member protection officers, your MPIOs, because that's a role that is still in place, and there is still a member protection policy under the Sport Integrity Australia framework. If you are a club who has smaller club, then your MPIO can kind of cover over on the safe hockey piece. If you are a club with lots of juniors and you're a big club, then you could have both. You could introduce a safe hockey officer as well as your member protection officer, and they can focus on children and young people and the child safe standards. Now, we are really pushing for safe hockey to include all athletes across the community, in actual fact, everybody, and athletes of any age. But we're starting with children and young people because of those standards and the things that are in place. It doesn't change when you turn 18. We don't stop caring about your safety and well-being. But just while we try and fit under the right banners, we will keep the MPIOs where they are. There's nothing changing there, but the safe hockey person is just going to be the person to lead and support this piece of work, which will help you guys with your compliance around the standards and rolling this out. So the safe hockey officer, I have a PD available in the pack, so don't panic about that. There will be a position description available. We've broken the role into 4 pieces. So one of those pieces is about promoting the hub, getting the posters up, getting the conversation happening around safe hockey, putting it on the agenda, talking to your athletes, promoting yourself as a safe hockey officer. Driving and leading and supporting the club to put the things in place that you need to put in place. So that's the implementation of making sure you've got the right resources in place for your recruitment. You're doing you're meeting the requirements around how you're recruiting staff and screening coaches and that sort of thing. It might be around making sure the committee are across the risks within the club and that you're constantly talking about those, and the committee understands their governance responsibilities. We've created an implementation guide that has all of the things you need to do in it. So really, it's just about driving that work and making sure that it's happening and it's started. The other is respond. You're going to put your hand up as a safe hockey officer to say, come to me if you have questions, come to me if you want to raise concerns. That can be quite daunting for some people, and then there are other people who do this for a living and are really quite comfortable with it. That should be how you recruit to your safe hockey officer. Don't pick the person that's super nervous, pick the person that's confident, or at least willing and confident to learn how to handle those sorts of situations. And again, training, resources, there's fact sheets, there's all that stuff available. But you just might be the first point of contact. The other thing that's really important with our safe hockey officers is independence. One of the best things about a community club is the fact that everybody's connected, everybody knows each other, they've been together for years. Parents know the kids that they coach and they're all really well connected. One of the biggest risks for community clubs is that everybody knows each other, everybody's really connected, everybody's grown up together. It can be really problematic for a few reasons. It can be a real barrier for people to raise concerns about somebody if they're worried that no one is going to believe them because everybody's connected. It would be a barrier to raise an issue about a coach to your safe hockey officer if your safe hockey officer is the wife of the coach or the mother of the coach, or those connections are there. So it is, in the first instance, you might pick someone who is really well connected, who's going to hit the ground running with this work. But have a think down the track about picking somebody else who's been a little bit creative with who takes on that role, who might be a little bit independent, even bringing somebody into the club who actually has nothing to do with it. And I'll talk about some of those recruitment strategies in a bit. And the last is about updating, just keeping the committee updated with any changes around Safe Hockey, any changes to the Safe Hockey Hub, and I've also provided some resources around that as well. You will hear me say that all day, that whenever there is a request for you to do something, the resource, the template, the poster, whatever it is that you need will be available to you. So we're one step ahead. If you are recruiting your safe hockey officers, no, it does not have to be someone in the club. I used to work at a TAFE and I used to teach community services. So I was teaching TAFE students around how to take disclosures of abuse, how to have difficult conversations with people that are quite sensitive and confidentially. These guys would have been really well equipped to step into a role like this, where they might be the person to go to. So if you have access to a TAFE or to an RTO or to a university, and you have these students who are learning these skills, reach out, because if they're not part of your club, they can get to know the club, they can go and promote themselves, but they will have that level of independence and the skill set. So other options might be to reach out to a senior player who might be a police officer or a school teacher or a social worker. So someone who has that skill set. The other thing that happens is a club or a committee will say, we need a safe hockey officer. And it usually goes to the person that puts their hand up, which is the person who puts their hand up for everything and is doing all the other jobs as well. And those people are probably in the room tonight and watching the video. It's not ideal for you to take on another task like this. A lot of the heavy lifting for this work is in the next 6 months or so. After that, the actual role will look a little bit different. But don't try and do it all. Be a bit strategic and a bit creative with who you reach out to for this role. If not now, maybe at the end of the year or ready for next season. So that's just a few supporting questions and ideas and strategies around how to go and recruit. The committee should recruit, and you should have at least 2 committee members involved in the recruitment of your safe hockey officer so that you have some independence. There are lots of resources online, including good questions to ask and guidelines for when you're doing the recruitment as well. So the safe hockey officer's job is to steer the ship. It is the conduit between your community, your club community, and us. And you saw the sort of different channels that are available. It is to do that heavy lifting in the first year. It's not to do it all. And we specifically spell out in the implementation guide who would be best to do each of those tasks rather than just saying the safe hockey officer every time. There's so many resources and support and information available. And I know that that probably is overwhelming because there's all that stuff online. So the guide that I'm about to talk you through actually sort of narrows it down to just the things that you need to access for each of those tasks. And you're not alone. Every club now in Victoria is going to be starting to do this work. And then after that, you guys will be the leaders in Victoria because the other states will need to start to do it and New South Wales will be coming on board. So you're not alone. Get together with some of the clubs in your association and work through this together, like share resources, you know, do some of that information sharing, get together and meet, have a coffee, talk it through together. You're not alone. You've all got access to the same amount of information and resources. So it's a really good opportunity to work together. So the idea is that you're going to prepare to set the club up. You're going to prevent harm from happening by creating this culture where safe hockey and child safety is actively promoted. You're talking about it. The kids know about it. There's posters around. The parents know about it. You're going to be responding if there are concerns that come up, and this is not your job. You are not a psychologist. Well, you might be, but if you're not a psychologist or a police officer, it's not your job to investigate. It's not your job to provide counselling. all you need to do is receive the information and then to pass it on to the right channels. So the club implementation guide, which is specifically for grassroots, was designed to for you guys, for volunteers. The expectations are spread out over the season, and you'll see that by the timeline, the timeframes that we provide, and that's indicative. You can do what you want with the timeframes, but we kind of give you a bit of an idea of what to start now and when to sort of pepper it throughout. It includes a schedule of actions and all the resources that you'll need. So what you need to do, who needs to do it, and the resources you'll need to be able to make that happen. You can print it, and it will also be stored online. The links obviously don't work in a printed version, but some people just like to have a hard copy of something. There's a lot going on in 2023, and we are anticipating changes. So the guide that we have here is reflecting that. It's not assuming that we already have that policy and steering ahead. It is actually acknowledging that this is what we need to do now, and that in 6 months, that's going to look a little bit different. So it will talk you through those changes. This is the part about promoting and driving, getting out there, talking about it, making sure people understand it, and then just starting to put that work in place. A few other things that are important to know. At the top of the schedule, we actually reference the National Child Safe Principles that, that if you do these activities, you will be compliant with or working towards compliance with these national principles and these Victorian child safe standards. The New South Wales standards align with the principles, Victorians don't, so that's why we have the two different ones there. But you'll be able to see that, and that will be your reference guide. If someone says, are you complying with the standards, you can say, look, we have fulfilled these 10 activities, and they all reference or work towards this particular standard. So it's spelt out for you already. One of the things we didn't do is create the schedule against every standard. One, there's 11 of them in Victoria, 10 in New South Wales, 10 principles. So we would have had to have at least 11 sort of different categories. We sort of just categorize them in areas that we hoped were a little bit more user-friendly and easier for you to navigate. But as I said, in doing this and achieving this, you will still be meeting those requirements. So those categories are awareness, people, leadership, education, rules, and environments. So they're just the sort of different areas that the work needs to be done, and they're categorized in the schedule. We also use this model, which I've used a few times with sports, including the AFL. The idea being, rather than say to you, here's 50 different things you need to do, knock yourself out, go and do it, we've sort of categorized it in what needs to be done now, then what needs to be done next. So prioritizing these actions now, then focus on these things later on, and then highlighting the things that will need to be done again on a recurring basis. So there are some things that will need to happen annually or every few months. But this will sort of break it down for you so you can just pick it up and go, let's start with the nows and work through those. This gives you an idea, this is an example of what the schedule looks like. You'll see here under awareness, it says visual displays, print and display some resources around your facilities. The Safe Hockey Officer can do it with the club, with club community support. Kids are great for this. Buy them a can of drink, get them to go and stick the posters up. Even better yet, talk to some of the younger kids around 10 or 11 or a few different ages within the club and say to them, I need to put some posters up so kids know who to talk to if they're unsafe. Where would be the best place to put them? And then let them go and do that. It's getting their say. They're going to have more idea of where is better than you do. It's involving them, and it's also taking a little bit of pressure off you to do that work. Then you'll see that there is a link available for those posters. You don't have to create your own. We've done the photo shoot, we've done the graphic design work. It's there in those digital assets online. So that's just a bit of an example. We've added links for other resources outside of Safe Hockey where we think it's helpful. And then we also have made reference here to links through to the resources at the back of this guide. So there is some stuff on the hub, some stuff at the back of the guide. So that's just an example of what that looks like. And you can also see that we've sort of mapped it out over pre-season, early season, mid-season and post as well. So There's lots of resources at the back of the guide. They are all in one document at the moment. When we get the hub updated, we will make sure these are available as standalone documents, as well as all in one pack, because we want to make it as easy for you to click and grab them, whatever you need. There is a legislation map which maps out all the legislation across the state and territory, although please be aware that it's rapidly changing, so we may not always be on top of it, but we'll do our best to keep it up to date. There is a risk assessment template, because one of the things we ask you to do in the actions is to do a risk assessment. So to make life easier for you, we have created a template in there that you can use to do that. There's social media copy. So when we say get out on your socials and promote safe hockey, and you go, oh, what will I possibly say in my post? You don't even have to think about that, because we've created things that you can put into your post, as well as those images that are online. So we've got a bit of content there for you to use. So when you're the Safe Hockey Officer and you work through the schedule and it says go to a couple of junior training sessions and introduce yourself, and you're thinking, what will I possibly say? How will I introduce myself? What am I telling them? I'm not sure what to do. Never fear. Go to one of the resources at the back that has your talking points, and it will give you a few points around what to talk about when you turn up for the first time. And if you then come back a couple of, a month or so later, some extra things that you can say. So we're not overloading these guys with information in one go. You're literally just saying, it's really important that you guys are safe when you're here. I'm the Safe Hockey Officer. You can reach out to me if you need to at any time. There's posters around that have other ways for you to contact me as well. Simple as that. Then come back, ask them a few questions, and then you can sort of use these talking points to guide that. So if it's not something that really comes naturally to you. We tell you to put Safe Hockey on the agenda for your committee meeting that isn't under general business, because that's what happens sometimes. That's what we hear about. Have it as its standing item. And then I know that the next question to come out of someone's mouth is, what are we going to talk about when Safe Hockey is the agenda item? That's what this is for. This gives you an example of the things to cover. You'll talk about incidents that may have happened. And if nothing's happened, that's great. You might talk about risks. Where is the risk assessment up to? What are the risks that we saw? Is there anything that's happened lately that changes? Whether it's risks to physical safety, like hazardous buildings or signs that are going to fall down, or other associated risks that might be concerning for kids. And then when you get through those things and you still have nothing else to talk about, we've actually created a list of talking points for you guys. It'll be scenarios you can discuss as a committee. How would we handle this if this happened? It might be a short video. It might be grab one of the resources online, have a look at it, have a discussion. So we want that to be a constant conversation, not just we do it once and we leave it. It might be a 2-minute conversation or a 20-minute conversation, depending on what's happening. That's fine, as long as you're keeping the ball rolling, because at the end of the day, the committee are the ones that have that hold the risk when it comes to child safety. They are responsible around this compliance, and so it's important that they're keeping that conversation going. And then there is a poster that you can edit. You can upload your own logo, upload your own photo, put some details in and print that off. And then that's how you promote yourself as a Safe Hockey Officer. You can also update that PDF and then just share it through your socials or through your database, or you can put posters on the wall. It's up to you how you do that. So there are a ton of resources ready for you to help you implement those actions in the implementation guide. We also have what we call an implementation tracker. This is the document that you can bring to your committee meeting. So rather than cart your big printed off, 30-page implementation guide and all the bits and pieces, this is just a tracker that you can update as a document. It's a drop-down box of the status, and you can just table that with your committee so they can see how you guys are tracking with the implementation. So you can jump in there and just say progressing, complete, whatever. You can put comments in if you need to, and just make sure that that goes around into the committee for people to have a look at, so that they can see that, because it is their responsibility to know from a governance and in terms of Standard 2, particularly in Victoria, they are required to, as a governance body who have responsibility over the safety of the children in the club, to know what's happening and to know where that compliance is up to. So it's just an easier tool that you can use. It doesn't have all the detail and all the other bits, but it's available as well. So remember, you're steering the ship. You are the conduit between your community and us and your member association. There is a bit of heavy lifting. There's a lot of changes happening, which can be confusing. If you are all putting on your website, your club website, a link to the Safe Hockey Hub, create a tab that says child safety or safety wellbeing of athletes or safeguarding, whatever you want to call it, and then say, we are committed to the safety of all people in our club. For more information, click here and it'll take you to the Safe Hockey Hub. It means you don't have to put your own policies, your own documents and other bits and pieces on there. And that way we will keep everybody up to date by making sure that the hub is up to date. As soon as those changes kick off with Sport Integrity Australia and the National Integrity Framework, we'll start to update things to make sure they align. They've got everything we need up there. The new policy that comes out will have a Victorian addendum. It already has a South Australian addendum. It will have a Victorian one, which will make sure that it's compliant against the child safe standards in Victoria. All of that will be sort of explained. You'll get some communication around it, but the hub will host those new documents when it comes out. Again, lots of resources and support and information, and you're not alone. So I would strongly recommend reaching out to those people in your region as soon as possible and say, let's get a coffee or a wine, whatever it takes, and let's tackle this together. Get together for an hour or so, print off the implementation guide and just look at what you need to do, because you will find, hopefully, you'll find that it will be pretty easy to navigate and you'll be able to share some of the load as well. We haven't tested this yet because we haven't got to this point. So if you do find that there are issues with it, please send that feedback through to your member association reps, to the Safe Hockey leads, because it will be really helpful for us. And it won't take much for us to add a resource, change a template, do what we need to do on the hub to make sure that it suits better. So really for Victoria, you guys are the testing ground. Get into it, feel around, see what's there, and then let us know if there's missing stuff, because it might be stuff we already know is missing and we're working on, or it might be a gap that we had no idea because we're not on the ground trying to put this in place. Okay, I'm going to finish up. I will ask for questions from the group and I'll keep the recording going. And then if you do have a question that you don't want to have under the recording, you're welcome to just stick around for a little while and we'll turn it off in a few minutes and then you can ask those questions. Does anyone have a question?
Yeah, just to kick off, we had a question a few minutes ago, maybe about 20 minutes ago. It was around when discussing, who the SHO or the club should be. And I think you gave an example around it may be a good idea not to have the safe hockey officer as, the wife or the husband of a coach or someone like that. So the question was, would it be a good idea in a case like that to have two SHOs at the club?
Yeah, absolutely. Particularly if it's a bigger club. If you've got people who you think are going to have the availability, the interest and the skill set, having two people is actually really good when it comes to minimising risk as well. And they get to kind of work it out together. So I think it is a great opportunity. And it also means that if one of those people is too connected to a certain person, then the other person can still be available. I know that there are clubs who are going, as if I'm going to get two, I'll be lucky to get one. So I can appreciate it. But it's certainly a good option if you have that luxury.
Awesome. That was the only question that came through while you were presenting.
Awesome. Thanks, Jason. Does anybody else have a question?
There's been a question put in the group by Lynn. Does the SHO need to be around the club a lot, or is it enough to be available on phone or via email? I think you touched on that maybe earlier as well, but if you wanted to elaborate a bit more.
We can't expect them to be there all the time. I would be, if anything, I would be make sure that they are accessible by phone or email. but that they have sort of some strategic visits, so that they plan to come to a junior session or to come to a, you know, sometimes clubs will have dinner back at the club rooms after training, and it might be an opportunity to jump on a mic for 10 minutes and talk to the families. So do some of those sort of intentional visits, as well as popping into different at different times, but they don't need to be there physically all the time. Just available with that presence through the social media posts, through posters on the wall as well. Yeah. Any other questions? For those of you who are joining us via the video, I think it's just really important to remind you, this might be new to you guys, whereas Victorians are sort of kicked off a little while ago when it comes to child safety. That, as I said, the resources are there. Don't panic. What needs to be seen is actions being put in place. And if you have concerns, particular concerns about somebody, a person within your club, or some behaviours of a group of people within your club, I strongly suggest you reach out and get some support around how to handle that now, before it goes from behaviour issues to some serious incidents. Because that will help you sort of navigate where the gaps are and what you need. A lot of the standards, a lot of the work we talk around is around education. And as I said, I'd love to be at every club across Australia. I don't mind the travel occasionally, but that's a bit excessive. It's just not possible. So we're trying to come up with ways to create some online training, some videos, that will be available to you guys. And it might mean 20-minute short snapshot videos to cover off on some of the expectations, rather than really big training. That will all be housed on the Safe Hockey Hub as we create those. So you might get to that bit and go, how are we going to educate people? We don't have any education. I can't do that. So, you know, I would go to those resources, and it might be in the first instance. I've had this conversation recently. You might get your coaches together and pull out one of the resources from the hub under the coaches and managers section, and just spend 15 minutes looking over it, having a discussion about it. That might be the education piece. The discussions that you have within the groups, with each other, a lot of the time that elicits some of the best outcomes and the best information anyway. And you can use those resources as a foundation to generate that discussion. So don't feel like you have to offer face-to-face training or an online module to be able to start the process. There's lots of ways that you can use what's already out there to get moving on that. And even those in the resources, there was the resource that had some topics and scenarios and stuff for the committee to discuss. You could use some of those in a coach's session, and they could have a conversation there. So yeah, just keep the conversation happening. Don't feel like you have to wait for it all to roll out before you can do anything, because the people who care, so the commissions across the different states who have those enforcing powers, they want to see action, and they want to see you prioritising safety. I don't think they're going to sort of come down hard if people don't have every single possible thing in place, but they want to see a culture that's taking it really seriously.
Just another question in the chat, Sam.
Yep.
Are there resources for training and inducting volunteers and coaches, and when might they be available?
So I would probably go, there isn't something specifically for inductions. You can see there are lots of resources under the clubs and associations piece around recruitment. Some of the feedback we've had around recruitment, the recruitment requirements is that they're full on and pretty heavy for a volunteer base. The recruitment requirements come from both the standards, the principles, and the new safeguarding policy. So they are pretty intense, that they are high expectations. But I also think that the administrative burden that comes with doing the due diligence at the beginning is far less than the work that comes in when you have an incident and you have to deal with a complaint or something. So it is worth doing it, but you can be adjusted and you can use some common sense around how you do that recruitment. Induction, there's lots of stuff on there. You can pick something out and choose to add that to your induction. But we will make sure that we keep sort of, you know, it might be that we have a short video that we can put on that people can use, even the one that I used at the very beginning with our retiree hockey-roo. You can put that into your inductions if you wanted to as well. Take them through the Safe Hockey Hub. Say, this is the hub. Here's 5 minutes. That could be part of your induction. So it's on our agenda to have something that's very specific, but you can absolutely use what's there as a starting point, or just use the hub itself and say to people, if nothing else, if you do not know anybody or anything about this and you're in a position where you need to respond or report something, or you've seen behaviour that doesn't feel right, jump on here and read the relevant document. And the good thing about the hub is you don't have to read 30 pages to get to the information you need. It's sort of separated into small chunks to be able to find it. So hopefully that will help you with those inductions until there's more available. How are we for questions? Anything else?
I think that was all. There was one from Kate Holt, but I think Kate, and if Sam's answer to the previous question didn't cover off on what yours was, feel free to unmute and ask a further question. But I think that covered off there. It was just around, yep, so Kate said that's fine. So it was just around if the current resources on the hub will be enough to, you know, cover induction around what the new standards are. So, but I think you answered that previously, which is good.
And I like, this might not sound politically correct or something, but I would not get too caught up in educating people around the standards themselves. There's 11 of them. They're heavy. Even people like myself, I live and breathe this stuff, can get a bit caught up in how much is there. I'd be utilising what we have for those particular cohorts, because that's the information so that they need. Yes, it's important to say we must comply with the standards, and in order to do that, we will make sure that you have A, B, and C. But don't spend too much time in that stuff. I would be just going, as a coach, you need to know what abuse looks like, what behaviours are expected of you, and how to raise concerns if they come to you. That's it. And that stuff is available in the coaches and managers part, just so that we don't overwhelm people with that information and too much of the legislative piece, because it is a lot. There's lots of resources on Vic Sport. They're generic resources, and they would be the same in other states and territories, but they're generic for all sports, and so they're a good place to go to if you need more information. But for hockey, we've tried to create stuff that is hockey specific. It talks to the environment of hockey. It's branded as hockey so that people can really relate to that. If we haven't got any more questions.
Yeah, Kate's just asked, yep, Kate, feel free to come off mute if you like, and you can ask Sam a question around the policy, that's fine.
Hi, Sam. Really quickly, you just said something about the policy being approved under the National Integrity Framework meeting that I went to last week, the week before. We've got our own policies. Then the new under the community, those policies under the community, have they not already been adopted? Was my understanding that they had.
Yeah. So Hockey Victoria have adopted the policies that are currently on the Safe Hockey Hub. That happened last year. So that's why I was sort of saying they are your go-to. If you don't have your own, they are your go-to for now, but they will be replaced by the National Integrity Child Safeguarding Policy when that actually gets through the process, which is a little while. Does that make sense?
Yep. So the 5 that were under the under our NIF training that we had, or the Zoom that we had, they've already been approved under the community.
Yeah, the ones that are on the Safe Hockey Hub. And So yes, the National Integrity Framework as it sits for Hockey Australia has been approved, but that will be replaced with the new ones, and that includes those 5 policies that are also on the Safe Hockey Hub. Yeah, what is online right now is your go-to until we update that.
Okay, thank you.
I'm going to stop the recording. So thanks guys who are here tonight, and thanks to those who are watching the video. There are lots of opportunities for you to reach out if you need to with more questions. Go to your member associations or jump onto the hub and have a little bit of a fish through and see what's there. And yeah, please reach out, let us know if you need anything else, but just watch this space because there's a lot happening and we will continue to keep that up to date. So thanks very much for joining us tonight.
Thanks everyone for making the time.